All right. Thank you so much for joining. Everyone, we have Parthi Loganathan here, CEO and founder of Letterdrop. It is a content operation platform that helps B2B businesses produce 32% more content faster by automating their content operation. Jumping right in, Parthi, thank you again for joining the show. One thing I like to ask all of our founders is, what were you doing before you started Letterdrop?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm happy to jump right into it. Before Letterdrop, I was a product manager at Google. I worked on both the search team and on G Suite. So, a lot of stuff around both search and communications. And After Google, I actually spent some time between Google and Letterdrop iterating through lots of startup ideas.
Hmm.
So I built 15 different products
Wow.
before Letterdrop. Sold one of them. One of them is kind of like a lifestyle business. One of them blew up during the pandemic and then died shortly after. And then the rest of them just kind of fizzled away. And That was a very educational process, just
Yeah.
understanding what does it mean to actually put something out into the world and get feedback from that. And that in, Through that process, I also sort of honed in on what I wanted to work on, which
Mm.
happened to be letter draw.
Yeah. So many questions. How did you come up with 15 ideas? I know some people struggle with finding one idea that they want to invest time into. What was the process to come up with those ideas? Were they things you saw in the world that as you experienced them in your career? Were you just like, sitting at a desk, just writing away in a notebook? What was the conception of all these ideas? How was the process like?
Yeah, I've tried a whole bunch of different things. Initially, we tried being incredibly structured, so had a Notion document with a table and
Yeah.
listed all of our ideas out there. I was working with lots of different types of people during that phase, and would sort of like try to prioritize ideas by various factors, like how close am I to the space, like
Hmm.
how much do I care about this, how much do I know about it, market size, why now, all those kinds of things. And truth be told, I feel like it was almost it almost leads to paralysis
Yeah.
when you try to do too much research
Right.
and try
Right.
to get into ideas that way, because there are an infinite number of opportunities you can
Oh
be
yeah.
pursuing. A lot of ideas, a lot of great ideas, actually look like really stupid ideas
Yeah.
at the start.
Yeah.
And so if you were to kind of vet them using a framework like that, in many cases, like you'll actually discard like pretty
Yeah.
good ideas. And so, honestly, like a lot of those ideas came from that process. Some of those ideas were kind of like spur of the moment type things. Most of these projects I worked on for like a month
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
slightly more before I sort of decided to move on or
Hmm.
make a decision on them.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, I think what I learned from that process was you kind of just need to pick something,
Yeah.
something with a large enough market. Market size really matters
Hmm.
with a customer base or an audience that you personally can really get behind. You need to like these people. You need to
Right.
enjoy talking with them.
Right.
It's really hard to serve a customer who you don't really empathize with or enjoy talking to. So I think if you have both of those in place, the market's big and you like these people, you can always sort of like pivot your way into finding something that they
Hmm.
need.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
might not be the first thing you work on for them, but through those conversations and through talking with them,
Hmm.
you'll kind of like dig at their actual problems, and then you can kind of expand into a solution.
Yeah, you mentioned structure, and I'm always curious because I think that's something that's I don't want to say underrated, but it's undervalued in a lot of processes. Whether it's like coming up with new ideas or trying a new feature within your current product. What's like your main, I guess, constraint in terms of structure? Like I know a lot of founders say time, rather than focus on a particular goal. It sounds like you worked on something for a month and a half, a month or two, and you like cut it off. Is that kind of your constraint that you use?
I think initially that's what I use, and then I think
Mm-hmm.
once I figure out, hey, I have to change my sort of framework of thinking about this to pick a market and pick a customer I like working with.
Mm-hmm.
that changed. So now I'm like very dedicated to the problem of figuring out content marketing for
Yeah.
B2B companies.
Yeah.
And that stemmed from my own personal problems when I was working through those 15 different ideas, and
Mm-hmm.
some of them I was actually trying to grow them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would do is I explored hiring agencies, working with third
Yeah.
parties, all that kind of stuff. When I was trying to grow those companies, I just realized, oh wow, there are like lots of different tools and
Yeah.
processes and things that have to come together for me to execute on this.
Mm-hmm.
And so Letterdrop is really a culmination of a lot of challenges that I faced there, where it's like, hey, why companies should focus on what they want to say and
Right.
not how to do it.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do with Letterdrop is abstract away all of the operations that go into content marketing at least,
Mm-hmm.
and we're
Mm-hmm.
we're we're starting just with like B2B because we can constrain it.
Right. Right.
And then also like abstracting away best practices, technical knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
knowledge around SEO, like how to like actually run a content team, all those
Yeah.
kinds of things, so that you as a company can just focus on listening to your customers, figuring out what they care about, what they want to learn about, and then actually putting those ideas into a process and through our platform and getting out publishable content on your blog, on
Yeah.
your newsletter, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and Slack communities, all those kinds of different channels.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I think about frameworks and how that kind of led me to where we are today.
Yeah, no, I mean that definitely covers kind of the inspiration antithesis of Letterdrop. But it's interesting because one thing I face as a founder is the difficulty in finding out what to say or how to say it, and do you kind of cater? How do you cater to or help companies cater to their audience? Is it completely just the operational side? I'm assuming a lot of it's like diving into, okay, what does your customer base want to hear from you, which I think a lot of people struggle with. Like, what is your thoughts on how a company should attack what to say?
Yeah, so the platform itself helps you run the content operation.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the platform, we actually do have an agency side of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I think this is something that a lot of like SaaS companies should look into
Yeah.
by adding services or being a consultant to
Mm-hmm.
your customers who are not only buying your software, but also sort of buying your expertise and time.
Yeah.
You actually get a lot of insight into how they're thinking about using
Yeah.
your software, and that gives you ideas for your product roadmap.
Yeah.
It lets you deliver value to them quicker, even if like your software can help them with something, maybe you can do something and kind of like hack
Mm-hmm.
something together for them, and provide that as a service.
Yeah.
And so when companies come to me, either they have a very good idea of the type of content they want to produce. They've already done a bunch of keyword research. They've done a bunch of customer interviews.
Yeah.
They've done a bunch of thought leadership, and they're just looking for execution, in which case it's
Right.
great. Use the platform. It'll help you do that faster and better.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of the times, especially the earlier stage companies come to me and they're just like, our investors told us that we should probably do content marketing.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
really know what that means,
Yeah.
but we're thinking about it. Can you help us think through this? And so I talked to them about the subset of content marketing that we can help them with, help them evaluate their options against paid
Right.
acquisition, against webinars, against podcasts, against a bunch of other options, make sure
Yeah.
it's the right thing for them. And then I say, okay, let's figure out what you actually want to say. There are different ways you can go about this. You can think about this from a purely data-driven, keyword focused, SEO
Mm-hmm.
focused approach.
Yep.
What I more so recommend to earlier companies is actually talking with their customers,
Right.
understanding their pain points, focusing on like bottom of funnel content.
Mm-hmm.
These are all these questions that are in your FAQs, in your customer support chats, in your sales conversations, sales objections, all the questions that a person who is on the fence about buying your product or has just bought your product is asking. This is where you want to start with content. So I help them think through that process, help them collect that data, and put that together. And then
Yeah.
we also have a bunch of tooling in Letterdrop to help them do that too. So making it easy to collect these ideas from sales and support via email and Slack is an example of that.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that maybe I didn't get completely was in regards to like asking your customer questions and identifying like like listening to your customers. I think you mentioned there was a piece of like why, listening to the objections and why they won't buy. Um, is kind of part of it understanding and maybe communicating reasons why they should buy, or is it just kind of like a culmination of a few different customer feedback that you have, what they want or what their challenges are, and those who aren't your customers, how they can utilize potentially your platform to have success? Like, is it like a mixture of all? Like, how do you go about asking the right questions and knowing what questions or what answers you should use for your product?
Absolutely. So in terms of like copy on your landing page, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of language you use in your blog posts, in your LinkedIn posts, in like podcasts, wherever,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
always encourage companies to use the same language as their customers.
Mm.
Because you're speaking
Yeah.
to your customers, you want to actually use the same words that they do. And so instead of kind of leading your customers on, just listen to them, right?
Yeah.
So you're asking them questions like, hey, what are you here for? What's on your mind? Why did you reach out to me?
Yeah.
What else have you tried? What are you considering us? Like, what are you shopping around for?
Mm-hmm.
Um, what is your goal? Like, what are you trying to achieve, and why do you think this is going to get you there? These are
Mm-hmm.
the kinds of questions where they're not leading your customer on. They're like very broad, high level questions, which direct your customer, but let them sort of take it in their own direction and actually tell you like, hey, like I reached out because I need to achieve this goal by this time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it seemed like you could help me.
Yeah.
And now what you want to do is you want to straight up take that language they use, take those words, and that is stuff that you should be using on your website copy. That stuff you should be using in your content, etc. You want to
Mm-hmm.
always focus on taking your customers' words and using that
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Yeah.
I think in terms of like telling people why you're better, I think that's there's value in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you want to also not be too salesy about it.
Right. Right.
You want to think about rephrasing content marketing as customer education. If
Mm-hmm.
you are incredibly transparent with your customers, if you're super candid with them, and you help them make the best decision for them, which may or may not be buying your product, you will build trust. And
Yeah.
even if they don't buy you today, maybe they will tell their friends who are actually are a good fit for you to
Yeah.
buy you. And so you never want to be in a position where your marketing feels like you are forcing something down their throats or you're trying to convince them that you're better. Instead, show your customers, okay, like this is what we can do for you. This is who we're really good for. And by the way, if you don't fit these needs, here's how we can help you
Right.
find an actual solution.
Yeah.
So that's how I would think about actually communicating to your customers across your copy, across your content, is like A, using their own language, and B, not being too salesy and actually just being super transparent and
Right.
super candid to actually help them. Always emphasize helping your customer, regardless of whether or not that means buying your product.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think one thing, the challenge is like the education piece, right? And what to communicate, how to add value. There's so much around this word value, and I think it kind of has its own entity at this point, and how you define it, how you communicate it to your customer, and how it sticks, in their minds and their memory. But now that you're starting to work on Letter Drop and you've had some success so far, like what type of traction are you seeing for Letter Drop?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're fast approaching 50 customers right now. We're still a little bit closed.
Mm-hmm.
We're very selective about the companies we work with because we're trying to make sure that they're successful and we
Mm-hmm.
want to deliver a really good experience for them. We're gonna probably like open up the gates as we get closer to 100 customers, and
Yeah.
once we feel like, hey, we can repeatedly help teams who fit this kind of mold be successful. So that's kind of where we are right now. And we're growing both the agency side and the core product team as our customers scale
Mm-hmm.
to fulfill their needs.
Yeah. Have you heard of the concept? I've just read a couple articles about it. Like, the VCs are now not looking for unicorns; they're looking for zebras. I'm not sure if have you heard of that recently? That
I haven't
whole
heard of that one before.
yeah, it's interesting, and hopefully I get it right. But it's about just like companies are now moving to this model where they're not just offering this one product that's like winner take all kind of market, but they're adding not only community to it, but other services that help customers really incorporate other aspects of their business, right? Offering consultancy services on how they may go about content building. Is Letterdrop kind of in that direction? It sounds like with the service and the product, but are you adding community to it as well?
No, I love that. We have experimented with adding community. I think community is one of those things which actually requires a ton of effort.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we actually started a community and then we promptly shut it down. We got it to like 150 people
Wow. Yeah,
and we were like, we're not doing a good job of this. We
yeah,
actually need to hire somebody who's dedicated towards managing this community.
yeah,
And we simply didn't have the resources to do that. And
yeah, yeah.
so instead, what I do is I try to be active in other communities. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a part of communities like Pavilion, which is a
Mm-hmm.
community of sort of like senior leaders in revenue, sales, and marketing.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm part of Superpath, which is a large a community of 9,000 content marketers. Love the folks there. I'm part of
Mm-hmm.
On Deck Marketing, On Deck Founders, and lots of great people there. And then we're also a YC company as well, and
Yeah,
so there's the YC community as well. So through these different communities, I try to be an active participant. I try to
yeah,
help people think through content marketing, B2B marketing, and try to be as helpful as I can as an active participant.
yeah,
And that helps us sort of like get the word out for Letterdrop. It helps build trust where they're like, hey, Parthi and Letterdrop actually know what they're talking about.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think like community is super important. I
Mm-hmm.
completely understand the value. We definitely play in communities.
Yeah.
Um, I just
What
think
what was
that
the platform that you
you as a
started? Oh, sorry. I was gonna
no,
ask
go
you
for it.
what was the platform that you started, but then shut down for the time being.
Oh yeah, yeah. We just created a Slack community and we were
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to
yeah.
get like marketers in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just realized like you need to like make sure like there's
Just have like a
conversation
manager.
happening.
Yeah, yeah,
You need a community manager.
yeah, yeah,
And I think for a small company like we're like 13 people now, a community manager just didn't make the list of the first 13 people that we
yeah,
needed right now.
yeah.
And so we decided to kind of scrap that. But it was a good experiment, and I still believe in the
Mm-hmm.
value of community. Lots of companies have strong communities, and that's how they get a lot of their customers.
Yeah,
There's this
yeah,
company called DBT, Fishtown Analytics, and they have like this massive community of people in like data.
yeah, yeah.
And I think they actually started out as a community and then really turned that into a
Yeah,
company.
yeah, you see that a lot
So
now.
yeah, yeah,
Whether
that
it's on like
happens.
Discord or Telegram, I see those becoming more and more prevalent. It's like it's one or the other. It's like you're a company, you're working on a product, and then you dabble in community and see where that goes. And then sometimes you're like, oh my God, I've got all these people, all this community, all this activity, and now I need to figure out how to add more value to it or monetize it. And so it's
Right,
fascinating when you dive into the community aspect because it's so involved now. There's like you said, there needs to be a
yeah,
manager, there
yeah,
needs to be activity, otherwise it dies. It's like an organism, it like lives and grows.
right.
Yeah.
I think people should think about content and community as products,
Mm-hmm.
actually.
Yeah.
Your content, community, product, services, app service, they're all the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you're trying to deliver value to people,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and in exchange for that, like they probably pay you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like whatever you give them, whether that be community, whether that be content, whether that be a product, whether that be a service, all of it has to meet a bar of actually providing value. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
people are going to
Mm-hmm.
attrition.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it would be foolish for someone to want to produce content without being very careful about
Right.
thinking about it and figuring out what's educational, what's useful, and
Yeah.
just kind of like ad hoc doing it.
Right.
And I think it would be foolish for a company to invest in the community and not actually hire a community manager and do it
Right.
properly. It would be like we're shipping a product and like, yeah, we're not going to ha offer support for it. Engineers, oh yeah, engineers stop
Yeah.
working on it. I'm just like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Like, are you investing in this?
Right. Yeah. What you mentioned? God, you mentioned something around when you think about content, you don't just do it ad hoc. And when you say that, are you talking about like having some kind of roadmap or plan or strategy with the content you provide? And is that kind of like what's incorporated in Letterdrop?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like a product, you'd have a product roadmap, and certain features are nice to have, certain
Mm-hmm.
features are things which are going to move the needle, going to win that extra customer,
Mm-hmm.
going to truly improve user experience or drive new users. Content is exactly the same way.
Mm.
There is potentially an infinite amount of content you can produce.
Yeah.
You don't have the time or the budget to create all of that
Mm-hmm.
unless you're like a very mature company.
Mm-hmm.
So what you need to do is figure out how do you prioritize and how do you plan? How
Mm-hmm.
do you figure out, okay, these are the resources we have. This is the amount of content we can produce over the course of the next month, over the course of the next quarter, over the next year. What do we actually want to do? Who are the
Yeah.
customers we are going after? What are their problems? How do we educate them? And where do we distribute this content? What do we want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And so what Letterdrop does is it helps you collect all those ideas,
Mm-hmm.
figure out the subset of ideas you want to work on, prioritize them, and then actually get those worked on, planning them out on your content calendar, tracking all these projects all the way from ideation to completion, and finally distributing them all to the right channels. So
Yeah.
very much thinking about content, it's very similar to like how you would think about product and like
Yeah.
shipping product and determining your product roadmap.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. What are the biggest risks that Letterdrop faces today?
Yeah, great question. So Letterdrop is in a very mature space.
Mm-hmm.
I think content marketing is getting increasingly popular,
Mm-hmm.
but SEO as a space has been around since Google has
I was
started for
learning
like
it.
20 years.
Yeah, I was diving into it last week, just
Um,
more and more. It's
right,
so
but it keeps
involved.
change and it keeps
Yeah,
changing,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And still like you would think like we have figured this out by now, but no, like
No,
new stuff keeps happening.
yeah,
And then content as a whole keeps evolving as well, like different ways of approaching email, new channels like LinkedIn and Twitter are big now. LinkedIn especially in the B2B space,
mm-hmm.
and now there are these new mediums where people aren't quite sure. It's higher effort, video,
Yeah,
audio,
yeah.
like YouTube, TikTok,
Podcasting.
Instagram, podcasting.
Yeah,
These are all kind of like being explored right now as well. So there's a lot of surface area to cover. So I think step one for us is just like focus
mm-hmm.
and making sure that we're nailing like text-based content right now,
Right.
blogs, LinkedIn, Twitter, email right now. So focus is the first thing that we need to figure out. The second risk for us is we're in a red ocean market.
Yeah,
Marketing SaaS is probably one of the most competitive spaces out there.
yeah,
And so for us, figuring out, okay, like how do we stand out in this very competitive space?
mm-hmm.
How do we make sure that people understand what we do and how we're different from people is definitely a challenge we're gonna
Yeah,
face.
yeah.
And so,
Oh, go ahead. Go.
yeah,
Sorry.
go for it.
No, I was just gonna say that it's interesting because content marketing I always associate with like agencies, but this whole operational
Hmm.
component and platform, I feel like it's adopting an old idea in this red ocean, but kind of creating a blue ocean in front of you because it's so new. Like I don't know a lot of content marketing platforms that help you organize it, operationalize it, and execute on it. It's typically like agencies telling you what to do, and maybe
Right.
hiring them.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of like where this started. I was working with agencies and I was frustrated by the
Yeah.
experience. I was like, I want to do this myself. I want more ownership around
Mm-hmm.
this,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't have the knowledge and resources to figure out like how to actually execute.
Mm,
And so what we're trying to do is be like, okay, instead of having to buy these six or seven different tools and have this knowledge on how to use them together, we're systematizing and operationalizing that process so
yeah.
you can just focus on like what you want to say and then you put it through the system and it takes care of the SEO optimization, it takes care of distribution, it takes care of project management for you.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do to stand out or figure out like our positioning is really like owning content ops. Like people know
Yeah.
what marketing ops is. They're just
Yeah.
like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, all the stuff that goes into
Right.
making marketing happen, the jobs to be done. And so content ops is a subset of marketing ops. All the jobs to be done that you're going to hire somebody for, hire an agency for, buy a bunch of tooling for,
Mm-hmm.
we just like take care of that for you. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that is still a fairly nascent and unexplored space. And so that's how we're carving our niche out
Yeah.
in the very, very crowded um, area of like marketing SaaS.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think one thing that really hit the nail on the head for me was owning your content because I'm the same way, and my co-founder is the same way. It's like we want to utilize and brand ourselves and communicate some value in a certain way, but when you start wanting to like operationalize it or really invest time into it, it's like you lose your voice, you lose that component that really made your business and made you unique to your customers. And I love that. It sounds like Letterdrop is giving you that ownership back and allowing you to just learn and also execute, like you said. Just real quick, what are some other ways like you're helping educate your customers? Like I'm sure it's newsletter, blogs. What ways are you educating your customers and giving the power back to the founders of these companies?
Yeah, so I'd say in terms of like actually helping our customers, we have a couple of different channels. So we
Hmm.
have our blog where we're pretty active. We have our newsletter, which is a lot of our blog articles repurposed. And then I'm very active on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'd say LinkedIn especially,
Yeah.
where I've built this community of sort of like VPs of marketing, content marketing
Hmm.
managers, founders who follow me now. And I'm just helping them with
Sure.
things around SEO, things around B2B marketing. Beyond that, I'm helpful in all of these kinds of communities, which I
Yeah.
mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Just, it's honestly like all this knowledge that I've collected from just being in this space
Yeah.
for the past year and a half.
Yeah.
Also, I used to work on search at Google, so I've kind of seen how the sausage was made
Yeah.
for on the other side of SEO as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
wherever I can, I just try to share my knowledge with all these folks, and hopefully that turns into trust, and eventually we're able to say like, hey, you don't really need to think about this. I want you to just focus on your customers and what you
Yeah.
want to say. Let us focus on the rest of the stuff.
Right.
And we know what jobs to be done can be outsourced or put into software, and we know what jobs to be done need to stay
Mm.
close to your company because, like to your point, like you're going to be you hire an agency and they're going to wash away your voice. It's not
Yeah.
going to sound like you anymore.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
get you like you do. You don't get they don't get your customers like you do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely stalked your LinkedIn. I was super impressed, and I love the level of activity, and just like learning the content behind what your experience was. What's the long term vision for Letterdrop?
Yeah, I think long term, our goal is to essentially abstract away all of the best practices, technical know-how, the grungy tasks no one
Hmm.
wants to do
Yep.
around content marketing very specifically, so that you as a company, you just come in and just be like, okay, like here's what we know about our customers.
Hmm.
Maybe like we even help you like extract those insights from your CRM, from
Yeah.
your support stuff, and say like, hey, here's what your customers want to hear about.
Yeah.
You push a button, you add some stuff, record a video, whatever it may be,
Hmm.
and then you put it into the system and outcomes, publish content
Hmm.
in all the right places.
Hmm.
Essentially, like letting humans do what they're good at, which
Right.
is being creative and listening and
Hmm.
being empathetic and thinking,
Yeah.
and letting machines take care of the rest.
Right.
All of the stuff that needs to be automated, the stuff that is checking boxes, or stuff that like other people have figured out already. Don't
Yeah.
reinvent the wheel. Like let us handle that for you. So that is the broad vision for Letterdrop. It's just we truly we're the platform you go to for B2B content marketing, and we just like take care of that function for you.
I love it. I love it. Let humans do what they do best, and then let machines take the rest. I love
Right.
that. Bonus question here I always like to ask my guests is, what books or people have influenced you the most?
So I'd say most recently in terms I'm going very deep
Hmm.
into this whole like content marketing thing with Letterdrop.
Yeah.
There's an agency called Animals. They're sort of like the leaders in the space in terms of B2B
Hmm.
marketing. Very good at what they do. And they're sort of like VP of content, or I'm not quite sure what his title is. Ryan Law
Hmm.
is truly amazing at thinking through frameworks and thinking about how the content marketing landscape is evolving and how people want to be sold to.
Hmm.
And so I read a lot of his writing, and I think that's been very influential recently, especially as we think about our business and we think
Yeah.
about like how do we like want to help folks like him um, focus on being smart
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff, and we abstract all the grungy parts away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say Ryan Law. Definitely follow him on Twitter or LinkedIn. Really great person to follow if you're thinking about B2B content marketing right now.
Love that. Love that. And last little bit here before we close up is, where do we support Letterdrop? Where can we find you? Where can we learn more about content marketing? Yeah, where can we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our website is letterdrop.com. Pretty easy to spell.
Yeah.
But you can also connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm very active there, and also subscribe to our newsletter, which you can find from our website. My name is Parthi Loganathan. You can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter at Parthi_Logan. And yeah, I'm very
Cool.
loud out there, so
I
there's a
love it.
lot about B2B marketing and content marketing
I love it.
you'll learn about from there. I'm also very approachable, so if you ever want to email me, I'm Parthi@letterdrop.com, and happy to talk to any sort of company just starting to think about content marketing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining the show. I really appreciate everything we learned, and I'm excited to learn more about content marketing myself. Selfishly, this is a way for me to learn about about companies and how they do things better, so I can improve. But I'm excited for our listeners to do the same. So thank you again, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Julian.
Of course.